Welcome to Creative Solutions for a New World, Climate and Artists Series. I'm Frances Littman, your host. I'd like to gratefully acknowledge the Coast Salish people of this region and First Nations worldwide. For thousands of years, the abundance that these lands and waters provide us to live, work, and play is due to the reciprocal relationships by which Coast Salish and the world's first people have lived and live today. Before I introduce our community partner, Jonathan O'Riordan, who in turn will introduce our guests today, I encourage you all to please tune in to a very special TEDx event that we have co-produced. Working in collaboration with our community partner, bcdrawdown.org, we have put together an incredible lineup of inspirational solutions and talks by a wide variety of guests, including First Nations leaders, Dr. Trevor Hancock of Conversations for a One Planet Region, authors Seth Klein and Guy Dauncey, BC climate champions Meg Holden, Megan Curran, tree planting heroes, zero waste experts, and many, many others. We will explore how individuals can become engaged with local community groups to enlarge their influence, both in their communities and with all levels of government. We'll end with a panel of awesome local young people who will wrap things up by offering their perspective on where we're going and how we'll get there. I'd like to introduce our esteemed partner, John O'Riordan. John keeps the legacy of his late wife, Gail O'Riordan, a beloved music teacher and professional cellist, alive through this Climate and Artists webinar series. Welcome, Jonathan.
Today we showcase two of Canada's foremost artists who combine climate stories and art, Gennadiy Ivanov and Bob Haverluck. It's a real pleasure to introduce them into this program. You may notice that we've used some of their artistic examples in our display banners, which showcase our webinars. In fact, in today's webinar, we've got one of Gennadiy's pictures in our banner. But it's a personal pleasure for me to introduce Gennadiy because I met him in Norwich a year ago, and I was very struck with his work on art and science. He was born in Belarus, lived in Russia, and moved to Norwich when he completed his arts training. And some of you may have remembered him from the work he produced in one of our earlier webinar series where he worked with the folks from Canada Water Futures, John Pomeroy, Trevor Davis, and Bob Sanford, in depicting through his art the changing climate and hydrology in Canada's cold zones and the future of the water in Canada, especially as we face a warming climate in these cold zones. But I was very impressed with my visit to his art display in Norwich last year. In fact, his pictures that were depicting not only the work on Canada, but also some of the coastal erosion effects in Britain due to climate change moved me to create Climate in the Arts in my wife's name, Gail, because I felt that there was a real opportunity to make a more emotional link between climate and the arts through this combination of science and art. So, Gennadiy, it's a great pleasure to introduce you, and I look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. My name is Gennadiy Ivanov, and I'm an artist from Norwich, from UK. I'm from Belarus originally, but I have the Russian roots and live in UK for the last 20 years. I have a little studio gallery in the heart of Norwich, in Norfolk, where I work and sell my artworks. And I am the artist in residence in University of Saskatchewan, working with the Global Water Futures program. Below, I think it will be very important to say about this collaboration and program more. As a professional artist, I have been working for almost 35 years. During this time, I have done a lot of projects, went to the University of the Arts in Norwich, tried to find myself in different styles, materials and type of the art, as probably as lots of artists do, as a dancer, singer, photographer, sculptor, writer, poet and painter. But I always come back to my canvases and oil paint. This is probably where is my main love and heart. The paintings and project which I do is my territory, where is a flowing social veins of the underground life, pop culture, political history, mythology, fashion, And in the last 2 years, I have devoted much of my time to the problems of the climate change. This is logical and historical reference, analysis of the art, dreams, feelings, which surrounds me day by day as a collection of the political situations. This has worried us as the human being population. In my point of view, the artist can be an important catalyst for the change. Artists can play an important role in raising awareness, drawing a new audience and participants, and helping inspire action so that even in its late stage we can avoid some of the very worst consequences of human-induced climate change. I believe what I have the artistic techniques, skills and imagination to help make a difference. The purpose of climate works now is to give an opportunity to connect with landscapes at the forefront of climate change. The data, the hard work by scientists is extremely important, but I thought I need to add kind of emotional zine, kind of connection, what an art is able to give to the viewer in order to absorb more easily the information what the scientists are collecting. I think art is crucial for communicating about climate change crisis. The current climate change transition project carries me to the past, to the childhood. Very often, an image of snow comes to my mind. I remember winter. Winter is very long and snowy. I remember the forests with huge pine trees, fastened in the thick snow, snowdrifts. I remember sunny frosty days, frozen windows with the icy patterns. I used to love the frosty air and the breath of winter. There was always a feeling of lightness and some kind of angelic purity and essence. The characteristics of water and snow are amazing. I feel what I have a snow gene and what I am privileged to share this miracle with the northern people. So because last 12 months working on the transition project with scientists John Pomeroy and Trevor Davis have been a revelation for me. My dream is already come true. I have seen the snow and ice again and in the vast quantity. I understand more than ever now. Through the responses of viewers at our exhibitions, what artists play an important role through the trust of audience to me, to my stories, and to the scientists. Through they immensely enjoyed our work capturing and interpreting images on cold, snowy, icy, and remote environments. When I travel, I draw out on the snow, by the rivers, in the woods, on the glaciers. I used to pastels mainly for sketching, sometimes very quick sketch because it was too cold and wet or very windy. In the beginning, it was like a simple sketch with pencil, and I jumped to the color pretty quickly, layering the pastel pigment on the paper, and I smudge everything with my fingers and my hand. In 2017, I have painted scenes of the Norfolk coastline in UK. In knowledge what coastal erosion is a challenge for the country, and that rise in sea level resulting from the climate change is an increasing problem. The experience of producing this series of paintings led me to contact Professor Trevor Davis, who introduced me with Professor John Pomeroy, Director of Global Water Futures Research Program in Canada. I had fantastic support for 2 expeditions from Professor Pomeroy, especially he opened my eyes for climate change, inspired journey. I can say that my art is heard. I have many paintings which is really difficult to look. When the truth hurts, it is more important to portray it. The paintings, drawings, photographs, and video of locations in Canada are due to the generous support of this Canada First Research Excellence Fund supported research program. I feel privileged to have been able to witness scientists' important research involving sophisticated instrumentations in remote and difficult terrain in Canada, some locations of which could only be reached by specialized transport. I witnessed how scientists work in forests, in snow and ice fields, in torrents, and sites of great drought. I have seen and talked to communities which have been devastated by extreme events nested in global warming. One of the reasons why I do it, because art gets to our emotions, and that gusts something happen. You have no control on it. You stand in the front of the painting, you feel something. There is a lot more information visually when we are reading scientific articles or something like that. So much words you need to read to describe it. But when you look at the image of the glacier instantly, you have so much information about this glacier. It's like one painting with thousands of words. I have found it deeply satisfying to work closely with John Pomeroy and Trevor Davis. I regard our collaboration over how I produced my paintings and their titles, explanatory descriptions, as crucial to what I'm trying to do as an artist. My paintings and how they are presented are a product of this rich partnership. I hope my work does justice to the effort of the scientists and adequately captures the challenge what is climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. That was wonderful. Actually, I think that some of your art has been very instrumental in helping create Canada Water Agency, which we desperately need here in Canada to combine science with the changing climate and hydrology in our cold zones and prairies. And I believe that the federal government is now wedded to creating such an agency, as it was announced in their throne speech a few weeks ago. But I'd now like to introduce Bob Sanford, who is a personal friend of Gennadi's and also is the chair of the Climate and Security at the United Nations University and an expert in water security, not only in Canada, but around the world. Bob is a friend of both Gennadiy and of Bob Haverluck, and he's going to start with asking Gennadiy some questions. Over to you, Bob.
Well, thank you very much, John, and thank you for inviting me, and great to see you, Gennadiy, as always. One of the questions I had for you, first of all, I have to comment that you're one of certainly the most prolific and productive artists that I know, and I can't believe how much work you are able to generate. And I understand now you're part of a broader group of artists connected to Global Water Futures who are committed to aiming their artistic insights toward climate understanding. Can you tell us something about that?
I think, yeah, pandemic really situation, this is slightly difficult for all artists now, and makes me a little bit off balance. But I never stopped thinking about the climate, and I never stopped working with it on this topic because I was ready to prepare few exhibitions, and I was always in contact with John and Trevor, John Pomeroy and Trevor Davis. And we did lots of work together, like making captions. I've been painting constantly for many months again, and produced lots of new works. So this question constantly worried me about climate. So I just always been working and trying to study, try to promote my works everywhere.
I think it's quite interesting that, since you said that your exhibition on climate change and climate impacts in this region is still up in Canmore, and it's still being viewed.
Oh, yeah, really? Oh, no.
Yeah,
Wow.
yes, that's true. I think this is one of the most important things about your work is how you're able to convey really interesting and complicated issues. The Manhattan-sized Milne ice shelf, the largest and last ice shelf in the Canadian Arctic, just collapsed. How it must be very challenging to convey what that means.
John Pomeroy just sent me a link about this, what's happened, this article in Guardian somewhere. And it's really shocking to see this, like human-induced climate change problem. I think it's another confirmation. It's a big problem, and climate collapse on the planet really. So we as artists, we should do something with this, and we're doing really to lift up the problems and lift up the awareness and involve more people to this.
Do you think this is still a transformational moment for climate action, despite the pandemic? Your work is certainly generating, and it's going to be visible widely following. Are we still there with a moment that we can use to advance climate action?
I think it's very important, and what we do, as you said, it's generating more interest, more people, and as I said before, when people have seen my exhibition, nobody just left it without empty soul. Everyone was shocked, and it's extremely painful, some stuff. Actually, it was lots of Canadians, they were shocked as well.
That's absolutely true. John?
I agree with that, Gennadiy. As I mentioned, when I saw your work in Norwich a year ago, I was completely bowled over by the emotional appeal of your paintings. It really brought home the link between how art can display some of the science and the changing climate that we face around the globe. I think I'm going to ask Bob now to introduce Bob Haverluck, who is our other artist and talking about climate and the arts. Bob is a friend, Bob Sanford is a close friend of Bob Haverluck, and he knows his background. So over to you, Bob Sanford, to introduce Bob Haverluck.
Well, thank you very much. Bob Haverluck is a Trudeau Foundation Mentor, working with emerging scholars in bridging the university and the community at large, and is also working with a team of research scientists at the University of Saskatchewan, the Global Water Future Initiative, and their Spring 2021 Virtual Water Gallery. And in his presentation today, Bob will be using drawings from his book of stories and drawings called When God Was Flesh and Wild, Stories in Defense of the Earth, and also from his unpublished story, which I've had the great pleasure of reading, The Court Case of the Creatures, the famous Lake Winnipeg trial, and from his collaboration with Kathleen Dean Moore, who we had on one of the webinars, Take Heart, Encouraging Mother Earth's Weary Lovers. I just have to say, knowing Bob, that Bob is a true polymath. He is an artist, poet, philosopher, ethicist, and theologian, as well as a man of engaging wit and irresistible charm. So take it away, Bob.
Good to be in the company of everyone in this sort of distant immediacy. It's weird, but I have brought some thoughts and some images for you, and I'd like to start with a story. And it goes like this. Once, when times were very troubled, the people came before the Creator and cried out their alarm and sorrow. And the Creator answered them, saying, "Be of good heart, in good time all shall be well." "Oh, we believe you," the people said, but until then, could we have something on loan? "Yes," smiled the Creator, and gave them weeping and gave them laughter. Over the years, as a parson, I was part of many funerals, much deep sadness. This meant hours with families, talking about persons lost and times together, sweet times, rough, and nearly always in the face of death, surprisingly. There were stories inviting hearty laughter. Grateful laughter, recalling times with the person and how the person was in the world. In the 1930s, when, as an example, as one woman said, in the 1930s, when Grandma Betty was a little girl, she and her brother used to go into the pasture and trap gophers. The government paid 2 cents bounty on each tail. But she would never kill them. She just cut off their tail and let them go. There were lots of tailless gophers on our farm. Jokes amidst death. Even when our lives are confronted with death, we may be given deep laughter. Such laughter that not only relieves unbearable sadness, but widens and deepens the sense of reality. It can prompt our recalling of what we may forget, overlook. This is not a hollow laughter of entertaining destructions. It is a laughter engaging life more fully in its bitter, sweet complexities, and on hiding the good underlying our being, even in the shadows of death. My assumption is that we would-be lovers of Mother Earth, defenders, caregivers, often live in the awareness of much unnecessary dying and death. Witness Gennadiy's painting. We navigate with eyes alert to the dying of seas, whales, wolves, forests, rivers, lakes, peoples. And there is hurt and damage to the heart, the spirit from seeing and knowing such things. There is damage not easy to stop and look at. Am I wrong to guess that you, like I, avoid sitting with these hurts? We tend to lack the ways, the will to converse with our companion's sadness, anger, confusion. And no less, we avoid facing the doubts about the very goodness and trustworthiness of existence itself that such events seem to declare. So we bear down, keep our eyes ahead on what we can grasp with our thinking and with our hands, what we can put our hands to. So we recoil at what takes us to the edge of our competence and confidence. For here, our established self is at its boundaries, its guarded borders, where we may break down into tears, deep weeping, deep laughter. But what if such a place is not only a place of breakdown, of losing it, but of finding and of breakthrough? Many wise healers of the wounded heart insist that we must cry out our pain, cry from deepest down before we can regain enough confidence in existence to fully laugh. A drawing. Advice to self number 3. Because your eyes have seen forests ripped from the earth, seen the sorrows of rivers, destruction of the animals, your eyes have become wounds. They need to weep. Cry out earth's sorrow. Cry out for earth's mending. Counsel to weep is not wrong, but it ain't always the truest beginning place. Tell me if it isn't true. Often, the crying most freely comes after a trusted person, an assured presence arrives, bringing a graceful holding, a holding that recalls to us a laughtered goodness. Such a trusted embrace can unstop the cork from the barrel of our sadness. Contained grief often waits for such a beloved to allow the tears to really flow, the heaviness of grief to spill out, the wounds to weep. We cry because of the good that has been lost, but we are able to do so because of the goodness of existence that underlies us. No less than weeping, laughter may unhide the discounted goodness of life, allowing us to feelingly gain a truer angle of vision. It can give heart to our wearied selves, prompting us to re-engage in love labors of Sister Mother Earth. Let's consider for a moment laughter's affirming thunder or smiling sigh. And let's do so while recognizing the weariness of Earth's lovers, who often have the wind knocked out of them. How might a cartoon image this? Duck reinflates a deflated activist. What is the feathered or furred or finny creature whose existence lifts you up? For me, this childhood evoking image of a raspberry blowing duck recalls in my tickly gut something of who helps winded me get breath back. For me, this feathered flesh, a wash, or a woggle on webbed feet represents the marriage of water, earth, and air. Ducks are the heroes, heroines of shorelines and wetlands. They're sacramental subjects of our creaturely existence. Duck, frog, heron, dragonfly, dog, you pick. For you, are there particular places or times whose image pondered helps sustain or hearten you? For me, walking the shorelines of creeks, lakes, oceans are such, and in times in the wild berry patch are another. Adventures of the berry patch not only put a smile on the mosquito-bitten face, they can make the body smile. Anne dries in the sun after being delighted by blueberries and losing all sense of gravity, falling into the lake. Am I lying to you when I suggest wild berry patches especially tell of the graciousness of Sister Mother Earth? Mother Earth, as we go and gather what we never planted, never tended, yet there and there and there it is. If you come to where the wild berries are, bring no money, but a bowl. Bring no gun, but a bowl, yes, a begging bowl. If the good round earth were cleaved into two, it would be the shape of two begging bowls. Bring your begging bowl, empty save for the fullness of your hunger. Come, take the flesh of berries, eat, eat. In its time, the heartberry or strawberry is the color of blood, but it is not blood. Come, be fed on good fruit. You cannot pretend to have made. Kneeling, bowing, lying among the berries. Often there is a quiet laughter making the sound of yes, inviting us to muse or suddenly see in the berry patch or deer's eyes a gifted goodness to existence that holds us. You also have your places, times that hold you. In spite of all your knowing, your clever knowing that the center cannot hold. Yet, here, it holds. A refuge of hope. Marvelously, if we hold to what we are being given, we may sense this illumination running back to the very beginning of time and running ahead of us, far beyond our seeing. This may help nurture a trust stronger than our disbelief or belief. But silly me, not you, I can get so anxious about the needs and what needs to be done, steps to be taken. There comes a forgetfulness of this goodness that is the very ground of our being. The acquisitive mind noisily races ahead, confusing its wants with its needs. Shh, water's talking. There are two metaphors that can help us image our historical moment. One is history as a race. The other is history as a circle dance. The circle dance is about being in time, in tune with the sustaining rhythms and moves of existence. Moves beyond my little moves. It's about getting in time with musical invasions as we find ourselves sombreroed with bird song or river choirs, retuning our heartstrings to such music. We may body forth a remembering of our wondrous earthly existence and the good beginnings running to us, readying us to help make a good ending. But fool me, not you, fool me. I often, too impatient to practice such dancing wisdom, have no time to delay, to stop and dance. This, though having heard indigenous, Hebrew, Christian, Buddhist, Sufi, and other living traditions saying, stop, catch your breath. No, that puts it wrongly. Stop and be caught by the breath, the breathing that is not yours, ours alone. Stop and be taken in by the rhythmic breath and be stirred to the dance without which there is no winnable race toward a peaceable kingdom of all. And are not various sacramental rituals at their best slow dances of remembering, rejoining us to the graceful body of existence, which our society's practices often dismember? For some of us, musically celebrating with others the slow dances of water poured, bread broken, wine drunk together can ground us in a grateful existing, making our activism a thanksgiving. Along the way, there are communities of spirited persons help making us well as we join in the sacraments of mending and the healing beauty of the word and the world. But let's be frank. No, let's just be Bob. My name is Bob, and I am an ignorant human. This very morning, I got out of my bed, stood upon a great ball of fire. A ball of fire wrapped in stone, earth, watery air, and I was not amazed. This morning, I stood on a ball of fire, spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, circle dancing around the sun, and leaning to the morning air toward an orange autumn, and I was not gobsmacked, doing somersaults, singing hoorays to the Creator, or dancing round and round as these hard facts demand. Ha, such a lover. Self-destructive ingratitude is but one of the many follies needing correcting. Example 18, foolishness of my overly individualist self. Did you hear the one about the guy who, because he couldn't change everything, thought we couldn't change anything? This bit of comic business tries to make us laugh, even as it seeks to do more than that. Remember the radical dramatist Bert Brecht on Socrates? 3 times Socrates made them laugh, and after the 3rd time, they began to think. Importantly, the they includes the jokester himself. At least this clown, who writes and draws not so much to express a knowing self, but against my own very foolish self. A very unoriginal idiot, exhibiting destructive idiocies of his learned individualism that are strangely quite common. I tried to move the rock. The rock cannot be moved. I must accept reality. How come when 2 or 3 people get together, they lose all sense of reality? Behold the myopic self, who can't move the rock, who then assumes because he or she cannot move the rock that is reality. But then this self is interrupted. 3 strangers together lift, carry off what is obvious to common sense, a rock that cannot be moved. Strategy. Double down on the delusion and attack their no sense of reality. Or maybe this giggling self is correcting itself with self-mocking. No sense of reality. Maybe the smile is a glad recognition that a group's seeing and doing together yield good possibilities that I alone cannot imagine, could not see. It has been said that every society makes the kind of people it thinks it needs. Recall the play Becket by Jean Anouilh. There we encounter the king who has just victoriously invaded France. The king savors the strength of his impressive army and his ability to impose his rule. Against this notion, the king's closest advisor at Becket counsels that the cleverest ruler doesn't rule by force, but by corrupting the imagination. Corrupting the imagination in the service of the dominant order will mean that fewer police are needed on the street. For there will be, as Augusto Boal puts it, cops in the head. This self-policing is carefully taught, needs to be unlearned. Not always cynically taught, often with good intentions, taught by well-meaning parents, teachers, courts, artists. As you well know, our dominant order often funds the manufacture of corrupted imaginations. Research, advertising, public relations combine to sell me on a more fearful and grasping self, a self securing me and mine. This helps ready me to collude with the shakers and movers of bigger and more and more and more incorporated. But how to give face to such property princes? Perhaps the comic device of a Freudian panty would help. I mean a Freudian slip. This is my weapon of mass destruction. Well, whoops, I mean massive construction. Consider this. Consider this other take on our Canadian mining investments in Latin America. It might be other projects, other countries, of course. This is the hand that signed the deal to mine the mountain, sewage the river. Nothing in writing about beating the protesters or shooting their leader. No liability. So our dividends are safe, eh? We must admit there are payoffs to complicity with these common sense, realistic ideas and practices. There are great inconveniences and sacrifices, nightmares to be avoided by just going along. If the marketers of consumption and corporate practices couple my fear of lost comforts with assurances of ongoing ease for my compliance, couple their threats with bribes, they have a pizza of complicity that I can maybe swallow. There are times, oh shit, when I must fess up to the cons, confess what I find myself falling for. Was he wrong when that uncle of community activism, Saul Alinsky, insisted, we hear better with our rears than with our ears? With the kick of the bad rather than the you of the good. Sparrow, shorebird, river made sick are saying, listen, it's time for you to be showing your love for the wounded watery earth. If you got no love, then show some respect. If you got no respect, then show some enlightened self-interest. Because even if your heart and mind aren't here with the injured earth, your ass is. Ain't it true that if we won't learn from laughter, we will learn from harsher things? Yet comic laughter can equip us to better negotiate the pushes and pulls from outside us and inside us. Such comedy is serious, but only serious about the right things in a society that is usually serious about the wrong things. Comedy is a serious delight, can turn and redirect us to a more embracing vision. I'm thinking of a tragical comical vision of a suffering earth healed and peaceable. Well, this common sense can be found in Indigenous, Hebrew, Christian, Sufi, Buddhist, and other faith traditions at their best. This shared spirited sense of the broken ancient treaty with all the creatures of the watery animally earth, mended and heartily lived, can nurture us. This good sense, I believe, best situates and grounds us. That's why I daydream a vision. Someday we shall laugh at our fears. Someday whales, wetlands, forests will laugh at us. For we will treaty a peace, and our violence shall end. We shall bow, shall bend by God, and with such courtesies, watery earth shall mend. This grants a good sense of what is, in small ways, is already, being not yet. This seemingly foolhardy sense is enacted in thousands of ecology groups. Thousands of ecology group actions, defending, protecting, restoring, nurturing a glad singing earth. We are companioned in our ecological actions by many holy fools, near sacred clowns, seriously playing out the workings of such a peace treaty with the earth. And such love laborers are at once now and anticipatory, anticipating a full-blown peaceable commonwealth of all the earth. Behold and beheld by this. In a forest threatened with chain-sawing loggers, a host of Buddhist monks wrap saffron robes of compassion around the trees, thereby announcing the sacredness of the forest. Behold and beheld by this. A group of children and adults place their church choir gowns on rocks and bird-singing willows of a creek shoreline, thereby declaring, "Here are choirs of God," calling for respect, not ruin by government-okayed industrial sewage. Behold and beheld by this. In the Peruvian Parliament Square, a theater troupe gathered to protest the government's captivity to corporate mining and agribusiness. In a big soapy wash tub, several women and men dramatically scrubbed their country's flag before placing it on a makeshift clothesline. So begins the Lava la Bandera movement. Behold and beheld by this. Along the shoreline of Lake Winnipeg, like Lake Superior before, a parade of water keepers, Indigenous women, young and old, make a pilgrimage with prayer songs, water rituals, and conversations with communities along the way. The broken peace treaty with the watery earth is held up at the same time as it is being rededicated. These sacramental actions are comically absurd, obviously, stopping nothing, changing nothing. Immediately, that is. For that, they are laughable and laughed at. But they are also laughed with as the Creator's peace treaty of all the creatures is danced forth, even into the economic political realm. A small dance of life, a flower in the face of unnecessary violence and death. How do we say it? There is laughter among the tears, or for now, there are tears at the heart of the laughter. In this drawing of one of Earth's lovers, she sadly smiles. No, No, she quietly laughs a smile in the midst of her sadness as she joins in helping mend the earth. Final advice to self. If you believe the earth can be mended, you believe too much. If you think it can't, you believe too little. If you believe the earth can be mended, you believe too much. If you think it can't, you believe too little. Thank you, clown friends. That's it.
First of all, Bob, that was amazing. It was breathtaking. And I was going to ask you how you would inspire us to get through this difficult time that we're facing, but you more than fully adequately answered that question. It was stunning. So my only question for you is, how do we keep the transformational moment, the vision that you have created, alive? And how can we communicate that?
How do we communicate it? I think we need to embody it. And each of us where we are, seeking out and working with others in good community. We need to be reading and reflecting. I think we need the nurture of others and to help nurture others. So put our hand to something. Always put our hand to something. And seek out the community that nurtures us. There's a brilliant play called Red Noses by Peter Barnes. And in the final scene of this play, which happens during the plague of 14th century France, a troupe of clowns goes about. And in the final scene, the lead clown, Float, is endangered by the soldiers. And indeed, his life is threatened and about to be taken. And his final words are, sometimes in the face of danger, a person just has to stand their ground and dance. So if history is a race and a dance, I think we have to engage both. We have to join in the race, the immediate tasks, but also to attend to the rhythms of the dance, to bow and bend and attend.
Thank you so very, very much.
That was just wonderful. And your final comments attest to the work we're doing in Creatively United and in our Countdown series tonight, where we're completely engaged in finding creative solutions and working both with individuals and communities who are undertaking these commissions. So we have lots of hope. It's a big challenge, but we think we can make real progress. So with that, Francis, I'll pass it back to you to pose questions from our viewers.
Yeah, that was really inspiring. Thank you very much. Gennadiy, you've been working with Canada Futures for some time, and we face an increasingly insecure future as glaciers disappear. How will your art change as we face this emergency?
It's incredible. It was an incredible challenge. It's to see this destruction and how it's everything disappearing and crashing and falling. Sometimes I've been looking, it's like with tears in my eyes, to be honest. When I was standing in Athabasca and Peter Glacier and John talking to me, how's everything's going, problems. It takes me really very emotional, and this possibility to see this in reality, it pushed me to produce so many works based on this. And particularly, I remember it was a very bright day when, as you can see, it's very sunny and everything was kind of such a sharp and bright. And I tried to paint and draw very quick, and it's used very, very bright pastels to show these problems, how coming. And in the ice, really, it's ice, everything disappearing. It's very emotional.
Thank you. And Bob, you're an artist with a well-developed sense of humor, obviously. How do humor and art combine to create a more powerful message? Like, do you feel humor inspires hope? Or do you think it's just a case of just getting an audience through humor?
Well, I tried to answer it in 25 minutes, I think. I think it's a way of seeing the world. It's a way that insists on play and refuses to believe that we have facts without hypotheses, and that hypotheses are playgrounds, and the arts embody play, and I think to enter into art is to enter in to finding the play in things, their unfixedness, the play in things, and to open up possibilities. I think, you know, it relates to the earlier question. There's something about us, about our minds and our acquisitive minds, that overreaches our bodies. And I think part of the wisdom of art is to recall the aesthetic, the senses, the body, the bodiliness of existence. So the task is to constantly move between our very particular place, our body, this place, those around us, the place around us. And from that, we move back and forth, and don't let our mind dictate and overreach. And I think humor can remind us of our inflated selves, and to regain humility and to regain humus.
Absolutely. We have a great question here from Tom Axworthy. Weeping and laughing through art bring personal awareness, but how can we get decision makers to appreciate the lessons that art gives?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I don't do the art for the decision makers. I do the art for the Tom Axworthys, the Bob Sanfords, the Francis Littmans. I do the art for the Rebeccas and the Gennadys. I do the art for the Daves. I do the art for the choir. I'm singing to the choir, and the choir needs people to sing to them. I don't know how to answer Tom's question.
Okay, then I'm going to ask another.
Well, just no. I mean, that's a rhetorical statement, Francis. I do know how to answer it, right? In the sense that I think the function of art is often to speak to the converted, because they get dispirited, confused, and there's job enough there. It's not about necessarily converting the powerful so much as sustaining those with some power to work together.
Great, thank you. And Jim Bronson asks, how do we encourage artists who have lost their livelihoods during COVID to bring environmental sustainability artists to match the powerful lead of the scientists? Any advice?
Well, it varies in contexts and communities. I think we need to seek out companions inside and outside the art community. Often the arts community's greatest friends are outside, not inside.
Right.
And to seek companionship elsewhere at the same time as we look for outlets and places that we can enter in and offer what we have, and in that process maybe find ourselves at the center of some very good things.
Okay, well, we're just about out of time, and I'm just going to add that David Berg said that, you know, perhaps we can make comedic short movies that are open eyes to these issues. So another great idea.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, and John, now I'm going to turn this over to you to share the exciting and timely program we have planned for next week. And I just want to thank you all, Bob, Gennadiy, John, and Robert. And John, tell us what's on for next week.
So next week's webinar is called The US Election from a Canadian Perspective. I think it's fair to say that the US 2020 election will be the most pivotal in terms of climate policy since the climate emergency became a public concern. If the Democrats win, we move back to some form of democratic multilateral institutions, and the road to the COP26 in Glasgow in 2021 will be a much more clear path for all to combine. But if the Republicans win, we'll be set back a decade, and we simply don't have a decade to catch up. So the webinar is going to ask 2 or 3 questions. Who actually votes for the president? Secondly, what is the role of the Electoral College in US elections? And thirdly, and most meaningfully, is the US in fact a true democracy? So leading this will be a lawyer and public policy expert, Mark Rosenstein, who has got a background in working in Washington, D.C., understands American politics, and has a laser-sharp mind to bring to these questions. And you'll be answered, and you'll be asked questions by our friend Bob Sanford. So it will be a dialogue and a very informative one. So there'll be a lovely webinar next week and not to be missed.
Well, thank you so much, John, and thank you to you all for a visually stimulating and engaging program, and big thanks to our audience. We hope to see you next week. Bye for now.